Hello and welcome to this Riparian and Wetland AIM training video. My name is Ruth Whittington and I'm a wetland ecologist at Colorado Natural Heritage Program and the data analyst for the Riparian and Wetland program. In this video, we're going to be covering navigation of the Office Evaluation web map with an eye towards office evaluation and sample design management. A second video will cover processes involved in office evaluation and trip planning. To start, much of the information covered in this video is also covered in the Design Management Protocol, particularly in the appendix, where you'll find a quick start guide to using the Office Eval web map, as well as metadata on the plots layer in the Office map. Before beginning the Office evaluation process, users should make sure to review that protocol in full. Tools for this video require access to the Riparian and Wetland AIM group on ArcGIS online. This can be found by navigating to your groups on the ArcGIS webpage. If you don't see the Riparian and Wetland group on this page, you'll need to email me or Julian Scott, the Riparian and Wetland Data Manager, for access. Once on the group page, we try to link all of this season's tools in the group description. Here you'll find a training set of web maps as well as a production set. While becoming familiar with the web map and tools, use the training sets. These can be edited as much as you want without risking changing necessary data for the upcoming field season. Once you feel comfortable navigating to this page, move over to the production web map to begin full office evaluation. Once in the production set, remember that this map is the same for everyone, and every state will have points in this map. Be careful to exclusively edit points you're tasked with and notify the National AIM team immediately if you think you may have edited another project's points. For this demonstration, I'm going to open the training web map. I'm a geo-platform user. Just users should use other links to access the maps and dashboards. As this page is loading, I'll just say that this map was created to be generally useful for all users, independent of location, meaning no filters are applied and most layers are west-wide. As you're working, you'll likely find particular layers that are specifically helpful for your process. In navigating this map, I'm first going to cover the functions and buttons you have available in your web map. I'll then highlight important layers you'll find in the Contents pane before reviewing the important fields in the Plots layer. This layer is where you'll document the office evaluation process, and it will be central to planning sampling this season. Starting first with this panel on the left-hand side, we're currently on the Details pane. Here you'll find the Content pane with a list of all the layers in the map. This is where you'll find most of the features you'll be using. Additionally, there's the About tab. Here you can click on More Details to find a list of all the layers in the map, as well as any settings applied. There's also a Legend panel here. I don't use this as often, but it's available if you need it. Next, we can add layers using this Add button. This might be the place to find additional layers to help with your office evaluation process. Using this dropdown, you can search in a few different places. For most people, you'll either want to look in the Living Atlas or in ArcGIS online. The Living Atlas has layers managed by Esri, so these will be most authoritative. ArcGIS Online is where entities can upload layers and make them publicly available. For example, if I wanted to see any layers for BLM Colorado, I can search that and I can find, for example, this BLM Roads and Trails layer. Finally, some states, for some project leads, they may upload layers into the group. For example, California has quite a few base maps that are loaded directly into the Riparian and Wetland group. These are less common, but you may find that this is where you want to look for certain layers. To add any of the layers, you can always click this little plus button and it'll be automatically added to the map, which we can see here. I'm going to remove that for the purposes of this presentation. Moving on, you can also change the base map if you want. Most often, you'll likely want to use imagery, while the default is this topographic imagery. Next, I do just want to highlight the Save button. As you fine-tune the visual aspects of the map, such as filters, added layers, extent, bookmarks, and labels, you might just want to save a version of your eval map using this Save As button. This will save your map to your content. Again, this will preserve adjustments you made to the map, while field edits made to the layers in the map will still automatically sync with layers shared across maps. I do want to caution that when you save your own map, it becomes disconnected from the map centrally managed by the Riparian and Wetland AIM team. So edits we make to our map will not sync to yours. For this reason, we recommend returning to your original map and recreating and saving your version about once per week. The last couple of things in this toolbar that I want to highlight are this measuring tool, where you can measure the distance. This becomes particularly important when you're trying to figure out how to lay out plots. You can see how large of distances there are. Additionally, there's this bookmarks tool. Here I can add a bookmark for the current extent of my map, so that when I zoom around the map into different places, I can always easily get back to the extent I save as a bookmark. Finally, the search bar also does work for searching particular plots in the plots layer. For example, if there's a particular plot I am interested in looking at, I can search it in this bar and it'll automatically zoom me in to that point. Okay, now returning back to the content panel, we'll cover some of the features here. Again, this is a list of layers available on the map. The checkbox shows which layers are currently turned on to be visible. You'll notice some layers are grayed out. This indicates that they're not visible at the current extent. To see a layer like this one, you'll have to zoom in past this extent where they're visible, at which point they'll turn black. Next, beneath all layers are a set of icons. The first one will show the symbology of that particular layer. Next to that, you can see the attribute table down at the bottom. This is where you'll do a lot of your editing during the office evaluation process. Next to that is an option to change the symbology. We don't really recommend you use this because you will only be changing the symbology in your own map, making it difficult to look at the same point. Next to that is the filter button. This you'll use quite a lot. If you click this, a pop-up will come up where you can choose the field you want to filter on. Project and eval status are a couple common ones. Next to that, you can filter by a certain condition, like is or is not, or contains. And then you can either just type in what you want to see, or if you want to drop down with unique values, you'll have to change over to this unique radio button. And at that point, you'll have a drop down. To apply the filter, you'll just click this button and you'll see that layer is filtered to only that project. To remove or edit a filter, you'll just have to click that filter button again, and you can either remove the filter here, or if you want to change the expression, you can do that on this tab. Finally, there are these three dots, which will pull drop down with more options. Just to highlight a couple of them, you can change the transparency. If I wanted this layer to be partially transparent, I could do that. I can also set the visibility range. So if I only want a layer to be visible once I zoom in more, I can do that. You can also manage the labels. So if I want my points to be labeled with something other than point ID, or to set the visibility at a different range, I can use this to either to label by like site name or project or one of these other fields. Finally, I'll highlight, or a different layer, this Show Item Details option. You can use this to open the description of that layer. So if there's a layer that you want more information about how often it's updated or where it comes from, you can click that More Details button. All right, at this point, we've covered all the buttons and tools available in the web map. I'm now going to quickly highlight a few different important layers in the context panel that are important for office evaluation. First of all is the plots layer. This is going to be where you document all steps of the office evaluation process. This layer and associated information will also be available in the field evaluation web map, and in some cases, it will push information directly into field forms. I'll cover the fields in this layer in just a moment, but for now, just know that it's going to be a central layer you'll be working in. Next, we have field visits. Once the field season gets started, this will be the layer used to document field visits to particular plots. I do want to highlight the submitted site potential boundaries, and to do that, I'll bring up a particular site example. Here's a site in Idaho, where the project lead is planning a restoration project, which will widen the extent of the riparian habitat. Our default sampling method requires that crews sample the current extent of the wetland area. In this case, the bright green band of vegetation limited to the valley drainage. However, in targeted sites like this one, where the project lead expects a management change will result in a change to the wetland extent, they may request sampling beyond the current extent into areas where they expect the wetland habitat to recover. This information will be noted in the Blm Comments Field in the Plots layer, but we found crews generally need a little bit more support to know how best to lay out the plot to address the management goals. This is where the submitted site potential boundaries comes in handy. If I turn on that layer, I can see that I should extend transects up into the upland. From there, I can think about how exactly I should be laying out this plot. While this layer isn't going to be available for every site, if there are particular sites where it might be helpful, it might be worth requesting project leads fill out a potential boundaries form to help inform sampling efforts. Next, I'll highlight this previously evaluated layer. And for that, I'm going to change the visibility extent. This will show every plot that has ever been sampled or rejected. For all sites, this layer may provide information on how to get to a particular area or whether similar areas have been rejected in the past. Some sites in this year's plots layer may have been submitted, office evaluated, or even field evaluated in the past. For sites with a previously evaluated point that coincides with a plot point, this layer can also provide information on access, or if it was rejected, it might alert you to potential pitfalls in sampling the same site. For example, here's a site in the West Desert of Utah. Because it coincides with this previously evaluated site, we can see that it's been sampled in the past. If you go to the previously evaluated layer, you'll be able to get some access information. You'll have to reach out to the National AIM team to get additional information on the previous visit, including transect coordinates and photos, but this will get you started on the office evaluation portion. In another example, we can look at this site from Colorado. This also coincides with a previously evaluated site, but in this case, it looks to be a rejection. By looking at the previously evaluated site information, I can see that it was rejected as non-target because of upland vegetation, and that the crew lead in previous years found Populus tremuloides. I can use this to inform my own decision-making process. So while I'll still want to consider whether I agree with the previous decision, at least I have a little bit more information to go on. In addition to the previously sampled riparian and wetland plots, there's also a LODIC previously evaluated layer. While LODIC is focused on stream systems, access notes and rejections can still provide information for our sites that are located nearby. The symbology is very similar to our previously evaluated layer. So you'll likely only want to have one turned on at a time. Other important layers are the Surface Management Agency, or the SMA. This will show land ownership, and you'll want to pay particular attention to private lands, shown in white. These should be avoided while writing access instructions. In addition, there's also a few different imagery options at the very bottom. This includes Sentinel Imagery. While lower resolution, Sentinel can provide a little bit more information about recent ground conditions. This layer is updated fairly regularly. For example, you can see this area is covered in snow right now. NAPE is the other option of imagery that we have, and this comes in a few different options. We can look at color infrared, which will highlight particularly wet areas in red. We can also look at NDVI. This will highlight high vegetation cover in green. Finally, there's just natural color. This is just providing an additional time point to look at imagery. From there, I encourage you to explore the other layers while orienting yourself to the map. And remember, you can always look at the item description to find out more about how the layer was created. Finally, I just want to take a closer look at the attribute table of the plots layer. A couple of things to note when I open this attribute table. Along the top, we'll see all of the field names. Some of these fields will be editable, like site name. Others will be read-only, as we can see by the lock sign next to the field name. I can also see the same information if I click on the point in the web map. Additionally, if I select a point in the attribute table, I can also center on that selection by using this drop down in the upper right-hand corner of the attribute table. All plots will have a unique plot ID. This will be a code that shows a field office or district office code, followed by TW or RW, for targeted or random wetland, usually followed by a 5-digit number, with the first 2 digits showing the year that it was first selected, and the second 3 digits showing a unique number for the state that in that year. Older codes might look a little different, but that's what most of our codes will look like. We then have a series of fields that will be used during the office evaluation process and in the field. These will show information about the point, like where it comes from, the field office or district office, the state, the county or region, elevation, which can be helpful for planning trips, and plant ID, and coordinate attribute. The next series of fields will be used during the office evaluation process to document every step along the way. Office evaluators will put their names. They can also change the eval status of a particular point. And then there's a series of fields that can be used to document different steps in the process, like office evaluation comments or reasons for rejecting a site. I've also already mentioned this Blm Comments Field. For targeted sites, this is where you'll see comments about monitoring goals of the site, how the plot should be placed, sometimes some access information straight from BLM. So it's important to take a look at that every time you're evaluating a point. Finally, there's a series of fields that will show the contingent and supplemental information that is expected to be collected at the plot. Full metadata on fields in this layer are in the Design Management Protocol. Evaluators should read this metadata in full to understand the kinds of information available to them. Furthermore, it's important to note that this layer and information it contains will also be available in the field. So this will be the place to document notes required for sampling. This concludes part 1 of this Riparian and Wetland AIM training video. Spend some time orienting yourself to the training web map and reading through the Design Management Protocol before proceeding on to part 2.